Right now, though, it is time for the analysts, and our analyst this evening is Jodianne Aris, Assistant VP at Sagicor Investments. Welcome back, Jodianne.
Hi, thanks. Hi, everyone.
All right, so this evening we are looking at Amazon stock. Tell us what's been going on with Amazon.
All right. Well, first, before we touch on Amazon, just to mention that we are the Federal Open Market Committee is in their September meeting. It's ongoing, so they would have started today, and then by tomorrow we'll get a press release on that monetary policy action, as well as they'll provide some amount of summary on some of the economic projections that they're seeing for key macroeconomic indicators. And this is we're already seeing that the market has started to price in an expected first rate cut for 2025. So when you look at what most persons following the US market or in the US market are saying, is that they're expecting that there's likely to be a cut to come when the announcement comes tomorrow. And that would have been positive news for equities. So we have started to see some movement or continued movement in US equities based on that decision. And so for those areas or sectors that are more closely aligned or have that more greater direct one-to-one relationship with interest rates, we're likely to see that would be having some positive performance or positive impact for those companies. So when you think of companies that are in financial space or companies that in the US market would be considered more small cap because they tend to have more linkages towards variable rates in terms of borrowing for expansion or borrowing for growth. And so a rate cut, if it comes, it's still a speculation at this point, if it comes, would be something positive for those type of companies. I wanted to look at Amazon because one, I was purchasing something the other day and it had Amazon Prime shipping, and I was just like, why is it still taking 2 weeks? What happened to Prime 2-day shipping? And apparently that
to where? To Jamaica?
No, it was to a US account. It's a US address. But apparently Amazon 2-day shipping is going. It's not guaranteed as it would have been promoted when it started. And the other thing is that I started to notice that there were some ads for Prime big deal days coming up in early October. And so I wanted, I was like, didn't they just have a Prime Day or Prime Time or, and when I checked back, I wanted to see how those were performing and how it would have impacted their performance. So that really pushed me to look at Amazon. And so what we're seeing is that for that particular stock for year to date so far, over the past year, we'd have seen a 25% upside in terms of the price for Amazon. It navigates what we call a competitive landscape, and it's facing some amount of headwinds as there's increased competition coming from Target, who has been expanding their delivery service. So while Amazon has campaigned quite a bit in terms of Prime with the 2-day shipping in past, we're seeing now where their main competitor, a big competitor for them, is coming out with the delivery service that could provide some headwinds for Amazon. But they continue to do expansion, and so they're tapping into new areas and they're expanding. As we know, they have their own web services, which taps into the AI space of things, as well as they look at other type of ads and stuff that provide boost income for them. So for their financial performance, when we looked at Q2, we're seeing a mix of improving profitability, gross and operating margins would have expanded, and this would have been pointing to an improvement in core profitability. However, there is a bit of decline in the operational efficiency when you look at inventory turnover and how it is that they are managing the assets. And so that would have weakened, and so that provides a little bit of challenge in terms of how it is that we're viewing this stock going forward. However, revenues would have remained solid. When you looked at the Prime weekend that they would have had in July, that would have seen revenues over that period growing by about 30%. And so that would have been something that would have been good and stimulated activity for the company. EPS, the growth in the EPS, so EPS is still growing, but that growth is not as strong. So when you look at prior years, it was growing at probably around 70%. That would have dipped to about 50-something%. And still strong growth, but slowing growth. And so that is one of the things that, we'd highlight as a negative. But generally, the analysts that are looking at Amazon are seeing it, are giving it a bullish view. And so they are pricing in some amount of upside potential. that could still be seen for Amazon going forward. And just to touch on, as mentioned, they're expanding into healthcare services. So they would have been doing a collaboration to access insurance covered nutrition counseling. And this would be a significant step into a new space for them, as well as they do have, as mentioned, Amazon Web Services and their generative AI. And that would have seen some amount of triple digit growth year over year. And as we know, and we have been seeing with most of the bigger tech companies on the market, that's really a big multi-billion-dollar business that they are tapping into as well. And they would have done some partnerships in terms of Amazon ads, which should reap some amount of rewards for them to come. I think even though their generative AI and Amazon Web Services is a big catalyst for growth, the other thing to note is that there are a bit of constraints there because they are not leading in this space. So they're a little bit lag in terms of the AI. And when you look at their cloud-based servicing, their power and the chip shortages would have some impact for them. So they are not dominant in the space. So that is, a bit of the headwinds. But however, they are looking to expand, and so that provides opportunity for some amount of growth for Amazon.
I saw that they are pushing their Amazon Healthcare even more now. I got an email inviting me to Amazon Healthcare. I didn't click on it to check on it because I doubt it is applicable here in Jamaica. But that's another major revenue stream that they're also pursuing.
Yeah. So that's one of the big ones in terms of expansion that they're likely to come with, or that they're building out. So they would have collaborated, I think, with Faye is the name of the company, to really expand into health services as one of their strategies for growth going forward. And one of the things that Amazon is that it's not a company that pays dividend. So they really do take profits and put back into the company for future growth. So they're always looking at ways to expand and to develop and to kind of grow the company and to make it improve on that profitability.
Have they been impacted? Well, let me not ask have they. Obviously they have. How have they been impacted? To what extent have they been impacted by the new tariff regime?
So we have seen some impact there, and it's also one of the risks when we look forward, as in the potential increases for when you look at the revenue that they would have brought forward, and how it is that would have some impact. So it is actually one of the key headwinds that we're seeing. How it is that tariff uncertainty. I think when we look generally across most companies for the Q2 results, where it is that there would have been that high expectation for tariff impact, it wasn't as pronounced in terms of the results as we would have thought. But it still remains an uncertainty and a headwind for most companies because there is still ongoing negotiations as we see. So sometimes things may seem a little bit tempered, but as we continue, there's a new discussion that happens and that could have some impact. So it is one of the things to watch, particularly as it is that they manage inventory. And we already see where there's a bit of an operational efficiency fall off with how it is that they're managing inventory and that asset turnover. So it is something that could further impact the company in that space.
Now, if Jamaicans wanted to invest in Amazon, and I'm sure many of them do, how could they go about doing that from here?
Well, you could do so with Sagicor Investments. So you are able to gain exposure by using Sagicor Investments as your broker in the US. And so you would be able to do so, contact our Sagicor Investment Wealth Advisor, and they'll be able to give you guidance as to how about you go about placing an order, and we'd be able to do that purchase on your behalf. And also for us at Sagicor, we also do have a Sigma Global Equity Fund, a USD fund, which is one of our suite of collective investment schemes. So it is a unit trust product, and that would be purchasing on your behalf in the US market. So there are quite a bit of options in the US when you look at it. Many companies from which you can choose. And so instead of, you trying to figure out which one to take up, the fund manager does that work. And so you could buy into that fund. So it is largely invested in equities. However, they do have a bit of fixed income to provide liquidity, should that be something that they need to provide for investors. And it does provide returns in line with the S&P 500. And so that is another option for investors. So you could directly purchase Amazon on your own, as well as purchase any other US equity through Sagicor Investments, or you could gain exposure by purchasing in the Sagicor Sigma Global Funds, Sigma Global Equity Fund.
Georgia is agreeing with you, Ree, the Fed decision tomorrow. She says rate cut is coming for sure. The question is, will it be 25 or 50 basis points? How deep do you think they're going to go?
Well, I think I think 25 is probably the safer answer, considering that they're also, well, you know, what would be largely pushing a cut is that there is a bit of weakness in the labor market. What we also have to pay in mind is that is a dual mandate that the Federal Reserve, that the Fed has. They're also looking at labor as well as inflation. And inflation, in terms of movement towards that 2% target, has not been very fast. So we, at the start of the year, would have started to see a bit of a slowdown in terms of the annual inflation rate. But then by mid-year, we noticed that that started to bounce back up. So in terms of a trajectory towards around 2% target, that has not been forthcoming. And so I think the safer bet is that, you know, it would be around 25 basis points, because they have to do, look at the both sides, even though they are seeing a bit of weakness in the labor market.
The final one is a question from Rob, who wants to know what's the cost for, I guess, working with Sagicor Investments, commissions, etc. Like, what is the cost associated with starting that investment account and making those investments in, say, Amazon, for example?
Right. So there is a cost. There is a commission-based cost. I know we have been looking recently to do a bit of a switching up in terms of how it is that we do that costing. So I definitely recommend that you talk to your wealth advisor to get that direct, exact number. However, for the Sigma funds, there is just a minimum of 25,000 to start.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for this input, Jody Ann. It's much appreciated as usual.